Before we dive into today's story, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe, and let me know in the comments what you would do if you found yourself face to face with a creature no one had ever dared approach. Now, let's begin. The first rays of Isarath's violet sun spread across the horizon like ink spilled in water, turning the dense jungle canopy into a shimmering sea of purple and deep emerald. From the observation deck perched atop the alien city's outer wall, a crowd of towering reptilian figures gathered, hissing and clicking in excitement as they stared at the arriving human craft. A low, heavy hum vibrated through the air as the sleek shuttle settled onto the landing platform. Its surface, matte black and scarred from countless atmospheric entries, looked fragile compared to the hulking, scaled forms waiting to receive it. The hatch cracked open with a quiet hiss, and a single figure stepped forward. Commander Alex Dane emerged without hesitation. His gait was steady, purposeful. His pale gray eyes scanned the alien faces above him as though memorizing each one. He wore a simple exosuit reinforced with carbon fiber, but no heavy armor, no imposing helmet, no weapons strapped across his back. Only a single combat knife rested on his belt. A ripple of laughter coursed through the gathered aliens. One of them, taller and broader than the rest, leaned forward and let out a booming croak. His scales were black streaked with red, and his claws scraped the railing with each mocking gesture. "Behold, the fragile mammal they dare call an explorer," he bellowed, his voice echoing across the landing platform. "Look at him. No spines, no claws, no armor. He will not last a single dusk beyond our walls." Others joined in, their amusement spreading like wildfire. The harsh clicking of their laughter sounded almost like metal cracking under strain. A few younger warriors pounded their fists against their chests, a show of mock valor as they passed bets and waved fistfuls of shiny bone tokens. Alex watched them in silence. He gave no reaction, no sign of irritation or embarrassment. He simply continued forward, stopping at the foot of a large obsidian arch where a council of elder Isarathi stood. Their leader, an old male named Varesh, regarded Alex with cold, predatory eyes. Varesh's scales shimmered with silver streaks, marks of countless battles. His presence commanded the others instantly into silence. "You are Dane of Earth," Varesh said slowly, each word a deliberate strike. "We have seen your kind in trade councils. Soft hands. Soft hearts. You claim to survive anywhere, yet none from your species have dared enter Isarath's jungles. Why do you come alone, human?" Alex met Varesh's gaze without flinching. He studied the alien's serrated teeth and the twisting scars along his throat before answering. "I came to understand your world," Alex replied, his voice low but firm. "To stand where no human has stood. To learn from your wilds and prove that we are not as soft as you think." A cold hush fell over the platform. Varesh's eyes narrowed. Behind him, one of the council warriors, Zakar, stepped forward with a contemptuous snort. Zakar's scales glimmered green in the morning sun, his shoulders broad and marked with bone piercings that clicked softly as he moved. "Understand?" Zakar barked, his laugh sharp and cruel. "You speak of understanding as if you are a scholar studying insects. Our jungles devour creatures born with armor thicker than ship plating. Even the bravest Isarathi hesitate to cross the river valleys where the Threxel roams." At the mention of the name, some of the younger warriors shifted uncomfortably. The Threxel. Even in a city of predators, the word carried weight. It meant death. Zakar grinned, his fangs glinting. "Perhaps we should give the human a sporting chance. Let him greet the Threxel before the rest of the jungle tears him apart." A new round of laughter erupted, echoing through the city towers. Bets grew bolder, tokens changed claws, and small floating drones zipped through the air to capture every moment for the inner-city viewers. The mockery spread beyond the walls, a gleeful ripple among all who watched on shimmering hollow displays. Varesh raised a clawed hand and the laughter died again. His gaze bore into Alex, searching for a hint of hesitation or hidden fear. Finding none, he tilted his head in reluctant curiosity. "You truly believe you can survive where even our best hunters tread lightly?" Varesh asked, each word laced with skepticism. Alex's lips curved slightly, a faint ghost of a smile. "Belief has nothing to do with it. I'll return when I'm finished. Or you'll find nothing but my bones and my scanner logs." The council murmured among themselves. Zakar hissed in frustration, stepping closer so that their faces nearly touched. His breath smelled of raw meat and fermented blood. "Bring us the Threxel's crest," Zakar sneered. "If you dare face it at all. Then perhaps we will believe the humans are more than coddled infants playing at exploration." Alex didn't move, didn't flinch. He merely nodded once, then turned and began walking toward the city gates. The gates loomed like an iron maw waiting to consume him, black and heavy with old claw marks across their surface. The guards pressed themselves back, wary of brushing against him as though he might carry some human curse. As the gates creaked open, the humid breath of the jungle spilled forth. A thick fog drifted around his boots, carrying the scent of rotting vegetation and electric sharpness, a smell like ozone before a lightning strike. Alex paused just beyond the threshold and glanced over his shoulder. The aliens crowded the wall's edge, claws gripping railings, eyes gleaming with vicious excitement. For them this was not exploration. It was entertainment. Without a word, he slipped into the mist and was gone. Behind him, Varesh remained still, his gaze fixed on the swirling shadows where the human disappeared. His clawed fingers tapped slowly against his ceremonial spear, each tap like a heartbeat echoing in the hushed crowd. Zakar still stood forward, teeth bared in a cruel smirk, already tasting the moment when Alex's skull would be brought back as a grim trophy. In the observation towers, watchers recorded every bet placed, every jeer shouted, every twisted grin from the warriors who claimed to know the jungle better than any living creature. They replayed Alex's calm expression over and over, dissecting it for weakness. Far above them, small orbiting satellites shifted focus to track a single heat signature making its way into the maze of towering trees and thick underbrush. The official broadcast listed odds: human survival past first night, 0.3%. Return with Threxel crest, statistically negligible. Yet in the quiet beneath the mocking howls, in that space between each breath of hot, damp air, a different story waited to be written. Alex's steps sank into the loamy earth, each movement precise, deliberate. He paused once to adjust a small scanner on his wrist, the screen flickering in the low light as it mapped subtle shifts in local electromagnetic fields. His eyes flicked to claw marks on nearby tree trunks, long slashes running deeper than any blade could cut. He crouched, touching a patch of crushed undergrowth with gentle fingers. A faint smile played at the corners of his lips as he brushed aside a thin layer of spores, revealing prints larger than his chest. Above him, unseen shapes shifted among the branches, soft clicking noises echoing between trunks. The jungle watched him the way a sea of predators might watch an untested intruder step into their hunting grounds. Alex straightened slowly. His heart rate remained steady, his breathing even. Every movement radiated a kind of silent authority, the self-assurance of a man who knew the wild not as an enemy to be conquered, but as a language to be learned. In that moment, beyond the walls and jeers and flashing drones, a quiet promise took shape, not to defeat the jungle but to become part of it. And behind those city walls, an entire species waited to laugh at his fall. But they did not know what it meant when a human moved with quiet patience, when a human chose to understand before conquering. They would learn soon enough. And they would never laugh at a human again. Alex moved like a phantom beneath the dripping canopy, his footsteps sinking into damp moss that swallowed every sound. The jungle around him pulsed with alien life, a deep thrumming in the air as if the trees themselves were breathing. Vines as thick as a man's thigh dangled from towering trunks, and bright bioluminescent spores flickered in the undergrowth, illuminating insectoid shapes that scurried and vanished as he passed. His scanner flickered constantly on his wrist, a low glow revealing chemical signatures and electromagnetic trails. But Alex didn't depend on it alone. His eyes read broken branches and deep claw marks, subtle depressions in the soil where heavy paws had pressed. Every few meters he paused, closing his eyes to listen, not to the surface noise of chittering predators or distant growls, but to the faint undercurrent of the forest's rhythm. Far above, a hidden drone tracked him, relaying his movements to the alien council. In the city, the warriors and elders leaned forward, eager to watch his last moments. Zakar barked gleeful commentary to the onlookers, tearing pieces of raw meat from a bone as he gestured at the screen. The council chamber stank of sweat and blood, the gathered males clenching their claws around betting tokens, convinced they were moments from witnessing the human's demise. Alex, unaware of their gleeful surveillance, knelt beside a blackened tree whose trunk curved like a broken spear. His fingers traced a claw gouge so deep he could slip an entire hand inside. He crouched lower, sniffing the edges of the wound. An acrid, metallic scent filled his nostrils. Recent. Very recent. He adjusted the scanner and tapped a control to reduce the range. Nearby, a set of wide paw prints branched off into a shallow gully filled with strange fungus that glowed blue. Alex stood, breathing slow and deliberate, then slid down into the gully, moving as if he were sinking into cold water. A sudden rustle from his left made him freeze. A long-limbed predator burst from the underbrush, its skin mottled with shifting colors that mirrored the foliage. Its jaws spread wide, revealing double rows of needle-like fangs. Alex pivoted without hesitation, dropping to a knee as he pulled the combat knife from his belt in one smooth motion. The creature lunged. His hand shot forward, blade flashing, and a spray of dark purple ichor burst into the air as he sliced clean across its exposed throat. The predator stumbled, gurgled, and fell twitching into the mud. Alex didn't waste a glance. He wiped the blade on his forearm and stepped past the corpse, his focus never wavering from the deeper tracks leading into the gloom. Each hour brought new dangers. Giant insects with scything limbs clattered across vines, chittering from overhead. Shimmering reptilian shapes slithered past, their eyes following him in wary silence. Several times, Alex stopped to let entire packs of small predators pass, his breath steady, his hand never far from the knife hilt. The scanner warned of a sudden spike in electromagnetic activity. Alex ducked behind a massive fern, still as stone. Across a narrow clearing, a thick, armored shape emerged from the shadows. Even at a distance, the Threxel radiated power. Its scales looked like molten rock cooled into sharp ridges, each plate as wide as a man's chest. Clawed limbs moved with a predatory grace, muscles shifting under the heavy armor. Its head swiveled slowly, snout sniffing the air, molten amber eyes burning with an ancient intelligence. The creature bent its head to tear a vine-wrapped carcass from a tree, shaking it violently before devouring it in chunks. Its jaws snapped shut with a sound like cracking stone, echoing into the trees. Alex's heart beat once, twice steady. His breath rose and fell as he observed, cataloging every movement. He lowered the scanner, trusting his instincts over any synthetic readout now. He watched for weaknesses, subtle hesitations in the Threxel's gait, the way it shifted its weight before lunging, how its nostrils flared and contracted when it tasted new scents. 1,000 tiny details painted a map in his mind, a living puzzle of strength and vulnerability. When the beast finished, it shook its massive shoulders, flinging gore against the underbrush. Then it turned, moving deeper into the jungle. Alex followed, careful to stay downwind, each step a silent dance. Hours passed in tense, deliberate pursuit. He left no footprints, brushed away snapped twigs, and covered signs of his passing with clumps of moss. Occasionally he planted small scent markers drawn from a pouch at his side, each containing a potent chemical cocktail designed to mimic the pheromones of wounded prey. Back in the city, the aliens watched in rising disbelief. Zakar snarled at the screen, claws digging furrows into the stone railing. Varesh sat unmoving, his silver-scarred face illuminated by the feed. Beneath his cold exterior, a flicker of something unfamiliar stirred, a reluctant respect gnawing at the edges of his certainty. At dusk, the jungle transformed. Bioluminescent blooms unfurled like ghostly flames, washing the ground in surreal green and blue light. The temperature dropped sharply and high-pitched wails echoed from unseen tree dwellers. Alex used this shift to move faster, sliding from shadow to shadow as the Threxel slowed its pace, distracted by the thickening night chorus. He reached a broad clearing, its floor a black mirror of standing water. The Threxel moved to the center, lowering its head to drink. From his position along the edge, Alex studied the terrain. He noted twisted roots hanging like skeletal arms above the water, a narrow spit of solid ground snaking out toward the creature. His hand hovered over his belt, fingers brushing the smooth surface of a folded sonic lure, one of his few technological concessions. With practiced calm, he activated the lure and tossed it toward a far bank. The device blinked once before releasing a burst of low-frequency vibration, mimicking the distress calls of smaller prey. The Threxel's head snapped up, muscles tensing. It shifted, turning its massive bulk toward the false signal. Alex moved then, sliding across the spit of ground in total silence. He approached close enough to smell the creature's sulfurous breath, to see tiny scars crisscrossing its lower jaw. The Threxel paused, sensing something beyond the decoy. It turned, and for a heartbeat their eyes locked. Alex didn't attack. Instead he stood tall, spine straight, arms at his sides, knife sheathed. His gaze was unwavering, not as a hunter facing a trophy, but as an equal recognizing another sovereign being. A tremor ran through the Threxel's massive frame. It lowered its head slightly, an instinctive movement, half curious and half defensive. Its nostrils flared, tasting his scent, puzzled by the absence of immediate threat. In that stillness, the jungle seemed to hold its breath. The insects stopped their endless clicking, the distant wails faded, the very fog stilled around them. Alex held the creature's gaze, his heartbeat slow and deliberate, every fiber of his body radiating steady confidence. He took a single step forward. The Threxel did not retreat. A sudden chorus of roars erupted from the treetops. Smaller predators, startled by the silent communion below, scattered into the night. The spell broke, but instead of charging or fleeing, the Threxel huffed softly and pivoted its massive head, slowly lumbering into the foliage with an almost contemplative grace. Alex exhaled a deep, steady breath, watching until the obsidian scales vanished into darkness. He dropped into a crouch, tracing the earth where the Threxel had stood, examining every indentation. This was no longer a hunt in the traditional sense. It had become something older, primal, a negotiation beyond weapons and fear. High above, the hidden drone recorded everything, transmitting frames that would soon ripple through the alien city like a storm. In the viewing chamber, the room had gone silent, eyes locked on the unfolding moment. Zakar's jaw hung open, claws frozen mid-gesture, the bloodied meat forgotten in his hand. Varesh leaned forward, his breath shallow, his expression unreadable. Out in the jungle, Alex stood alone, night pressing in, strange lights pulsing like distant embers in the thick mist. He checked his scanner once more, confirming the Threxel's route. A faint smile creased his face, not triumph, but the satisfaction of a step understood, a question answered without words. He turned, slipping into the undergrowth once again, his movements measured and deliberate. Each step carried him deeper into the predator's territory, deeper into the silent challenge they had both accepted. Above the treetops, two moons rose together, casting overlapping silver paths across the jungle's shifting shadows. Somewhere far behind, the alien watchers drew in collective breath, realizing too late that the game they had mocked was no longer entertainment but the forging of something they had never seen. Alex disappeared into that moonlit labyrinth without hesitation. The jungle closed behind him, the night alive with secrets and the heavy promise of what tomorrow might bring. The night draped the jungle in an almost sacred hush, broken only by the slow drip of dew falling from towering leaves. Pale light from the twin moons slid across the wet foliage, creating a shifting mosaic of shadows that seemed to breathe and shiver with each breeze. Alex lay flat against a moss-covered log, his eyes closed, listening to the distant rhythmic thumps of the Threxel's movements. Each heavy step vibrated through the earth, carried along the roots like a whispered announcement of dominance. He had followed it for hours, weaving behind massive fungal groves and creeping under thorn vines that hung like nooses. The creature moved in spirals, looping back to confuse and exhaust prey, a tactic born from countless hunts across untold cycles. Alex respected that patience, the methodical cruelty of a true apex predator. Beneath the moss, his pulse stayed even. He exhaled softly, pushing away the humidity and the rank scent of decay clinging to the log. Slowly he rose, rolling his shoulders to loosen the ache, his eyes never leaving the faint glow where the Threxel had just passed. In the city, Varesh leaned forward so far he nearly fell from his ceremonial perch, his claws digging deep grooves into the stone arms of his seat. Zakar's eyes were wide, a feral tension creeping into his muscles, as though he might leap into the screen itself to interfere. Alex advanced now, following an almost invisible trail of claw drags in the soil and broken twigs above eye level. He moved as if guided by an old, private instinct rather than mere technological readings. Each step was placed with a precision born from hundreds of lonely treks across alien landscapes, each moment a silent dialogue with the wild. Ahead, the Threxel paused in a moonlit hollow, a clearing choked with enormous phosphorescent flowers that drooped like lanterns. The creature's obsidian scales gleamed under the silver light, each plate edged in iridescent blue. It sniffed the air, head swinging side to side. Its long tail flicked, striking a tree trunk with a sound like a drumbeat. A low rumble built in its throat, so deep the ground trembled. Alex stepped forward from the shadows. He walked openly now, hands empty and relaxed at his sides. No knife, no lure, no scanner flickering at his wrist. The Threxel turned sharply, jaws cracking open to reveal cavernous rows of curved fangs, saliva dripping onto the glowing grass. They faced each other in complete silence. The air felt viscous, heavy enough to drink. Alex's eyes did not waver. He stood in the moonlight, his breathing slow, the veins along his neck pulsing steadily. The Threxel lowered its massive head, pulling its lips back in a rattling snarl that shook leaves from nearby branches. Its claws flexed into the mud, carving deep furrows. Instead of flinching or raising his arms, Alex took a single step closer. His voice broke the air like a blade. "I see you, he said barely above a whisper. The Threxel stilled, one golden eye narrowing, its focus narrowing to a single point. Alex took another step, never breaking eye contact. His body language radiated a strange mixture of vulnerability and unwavering authority, as though he acknowledged the creature's strength without conceding his own. "Do you see me?" The Threxel shifted its massive shoulders, the plates along its back rippling like a wave. Its breathing slowed, each exhale a shuddering wind that stirred Alex's hair. A low chuff escaped its throat, something closer to curiosity than rage. Alex raised his hands slowly, palms out. He did not offer them in surrender but as an open gesture, an invitation. In the alien city, every watcher held their breath. The betting tokens fell forgotten to the floor, the once raucous council chamber reduced to a silent mausoleum. Zakar's claws dug bloody grooves into his own forearms, his eyes wide and unblinking. Varesh's face trembled with an emotion he didn't recognize. The Threxel's tail flicked once more. Its head dipped lower, close enough for Alex to feel the heat radiating from its open maw. Drool hung from its fangs like strands of molten glass. Alex stepped forward again until he could feel the creature's hot breath against his face. His eyes softened slightly, though his spine remained straight as an iron rod. He whispered something then, a sound too quiet for the orbiting drones or city feeds to catch. The Threxel huffed once, loud enough to ripple the water pooled at its feet. It lowered its head fully to the ground, its jaw settling into the mud, eyes half closed. The towering spines along its back flattened in a posture of reluctant submission. Alex moved to its side, placing a single hand against the creature's massive snout. The scale under his palm was warm and vibrated faintly, alive with barely contained energy. He closed his fingers slowly, feeling the roughness, the life thrumming beneath. A moment passed. Then another. The Threxel remained still, breathing deeply, its claws flexing in the earth not as weapons but in slow, animal contentment. In the city, a single voice rose among the watchers, a strangled gasp from one of the younger warriors. It snapped the entire chamber out of its trance. Panic, disbelief, awe, all churned in their throats like sour wine. Zakar fell backward, his knees striking the floor with a crack that echoed through the silent hall. His eyes darted to Varesh, searching for guidance, for anger, for any sign that the old warrior could make sense of what they were seeing. Varesh did not look back. His gaze remained locked on the feed, his lips parted slightly as if a silent prayer hovered at the edge of his tongue. Out in the jungle, Alex moved around the Threxel, his hands sliding along its armored brow, fingers tracing old scars and jagged edges. The beast shifted, exhaling in a long rolling sigh that sounded almost human in its relief. Alex finally turned away, stepping back toward the trees. He paused and glanced over his shoulder. The Threxel rose slowly, watching him with unblinking intensity. When he moved, it followed, each heavy footstep echoing through the forest. They walked together under the pale moons, slipping into the trees as one. Back in the city, chaos erupted. Warriors bellowed curses, flinging tokens and spears across the chamber. Elders argued in strangled tones, clawing at each other as if trying to peel away the impossible vision they had just witnessed. Varesh remained silent, his claws steepled beneath his chin, eyes locked in some distant horizon. His breath was shallow, each exhale sounding like a dying ember. Outside the walls, the sentries stared across the jungle, searching for the first sign of movement. Someone shouted an alarm, and dozens of warriors scrambled to the ramparts, weapons trembling in their hands. But Alex did not emerge alone. The jungle parted slowly as though bowing to a sovereign presence. Branches shifted, vines recoiled, the earth itself seemed to hush. Alex stepped forward into the clearing beyond the walls, his face calm, eyes shining like twin iron stars. Beside him, the Threxel stood. It did not snarl or charge. It did not roar. It simply stood as if waiting for a silent command, its tail swaying in gentle arcs. The watching aliens fell silent, every breath stolen from their throats. Alex paused at the edge of the clearing, turning to face the walls. He raised one hand, palm outward, not as a greeting but as a wordless challenge. The Threxel mirrored him, lowering its massive head in a subtle, regal nod. In that moment, an unspoken truth burned through every alien mind. This human, this soft-skinned mammal they had mocked, had not only survived their deadliest wilderness, he had turned its sovereign predator into a willing companion. Alex held that silent pose for one long, electric heartbeat. Then he lowered his hand and stepped forward, the Threxel moving in perfect harmony at his side. The walls seemed to shrink before him, the warriors atop them shrinking too, their once mighty jeers dissolved into stunned whispers. Far above, in the command tower, Varesh bowed his head for the first time in decades, the silver scars along his throat trembling as he exhaled a single shuddering breath. Alex's gaze swept across every watching face, his expression unreadable, carved from stone and fire. Then he continued toward the city, each footstep echoing like a drum of war, the jungle's apex predator following behind him like a living shadow. And in that unstoppable march, every alien warrior felt the icy edge of revelation slice through their hearts, leaving only awe and a rising dread of what else humanity might yet reveal. Alex stepped across the final line of dense foliage as though emerging from a dream, his boots sinking slightly into the churned mud that marked the city's outer perimeter. The Threxel loomed beside him, each step a slow, deliberate thunder against the earth. Its molten eyes scanned the walls above, unbothered by the ranks of warriors clutching spears that now seemed absurdly fragile. A hush fell over the battlements. Warriors stood frozen, muscles rigid beneath their scaled hides, claws twitching as they struggled to comprehend the shape of this new reality. Every sneer and cruel wager lay dead on their tongues, smothered by an overwhelming sense of raw, unyielding presence. Alex stopped and lifted his gaze toward the tallest balcony, where Varesh stood like a statue carved from ancient stone. His silver-scarred throat bobbed as he swallowed, the first motion he had dared since the human had emerged from the jungle alive. Zakar staggered forward, his emerald scales pale under the sickly city lights. His eyes darted from Alex to the Threxel and back, pupils shrinking to slits of disbelief. He gripped his ceremonial blade so tightly the hilt cracked beneath his fingers. "Impossible," Zakar rasped, voice raw as if dragged across stone. "No outsider, no creature, can command the Threxel. You must have tricked it somehow, used some vile human device." Alex's head tilted slightly, the barest movement, but it carried the weight of 1,000 unsaid words. Zakar's voice withered mid-sentence. The Threxel growled then, a low, resonant thunder that rolled through the gathered crowd. It took a single step forward, claws cutting deep furrows in the earth, and lowered its massive head just behind Alex's shoulder as though protecting him from a threat no one else dared voice aloud. Silence crashed down like a fallen monolith. Alex turned, resting his palm on the Threxel's snout, the gesture tender and unhurried. The alien crowd watched, unable to reconcile the soft touch with the lethal reputation of the beast before them. "You thought survival meant killing," Alex said, his voice carrying across the courtyard like a blade of wind. "You thought dominance meant destruction. You misunderstand both your jungle and your own hearts." Varesh's throat clicked involuntarily, and he sank to one knee. The act rippled outward like a shockwave. One by one, the warriors dropped to the ground, claws pressed into the mud in a gesture older than any written law. Even Zakar, trembling, fell forward, his forehead striking the earth with a dull thud. His broken blade slipped from his grasp, vanishing into the sludge. Alex stepped forward again, each motion measured, each breath deliberate. He passed through the lines of kneeling warriors, their eyes glued to the ground, scales trembling with each beat of the Threxel's heavy heart behind him. When Alex reached the central dais beneath the balcony, Varesh raised his head, eyes glistening with an emotion that had no name among his people. "You have shown us a truth we could not see," Varesh rasped, his voice stripped of pride and ceremony. "We believed we knew the jungle. We believed we knew strength. But you have turned the wild itself into an ally." Alex regarded him for a long, still moment. Then he reached down and offered his hand. Varesh hesitated only a breath before taking it, claws folding carefully around the human's smaller fingers as though holding something sacred and impossibly fragile. A deep hush settled, so complete that even the distant jungle seemed to hold its breath. The Threxel exhaled a long rumble, stepping closer, its massive frame dwarfing them both. Zakar crawled forward on his knees, head still bowed. His voice cracked and broke as he spoke. I mocked you," he said, his words stuttering through ragged gasps. "I saw only weakness where there was patience, foolishness where there was courage. Please, I offer my blade, my bond, my life." Alex's gaze fell on him, unblinking and cool as moonlit steel. For a moment, Zakar seemed to shrink into himself, preparing for rejection or perhaps death. But Alex knelt and picked up the broken blade, weighing it in his palm. "Your blade is shattered," Alex said softly, turning the fragments so the moonlight shone across the jagged edges. "But perhaps your spirit is not beyond repair." He offered the pieces back to Zakar, who received them as though accepting a living heart. Zakar pressed his forehead into the mud again, tears mixing with the earth until his scales turned a deep, trembling brown. The courtyard shifted then as if waking from a long, collective fever. Warriors rose slowly, still stunned, but their eyes no longer burned with scorn or mockery. Instead, they shone with a bright, sharp reverence that cut deeper than any blade. Alex stood once more, his spine straight and eyes steady as the horizon before a storm. The Threxel's tail swept across the mud in slow arcs, a living banner that declared without words that this human was no mere visitor, no fragile interloper. He was a being worthy of the jungle's deepest, most dangerous respect. Varesh rose beside him, shoulders squared despite the tremor that still rattled his bones. He turned to face the council elders, who watched from behind latticework balconies and flickering ceremonial torches. This human, Varesh declared, voice ragged but unwavering, is no longer an outsider. He stands as our equal, no, as our teacher. The jungle has accepted him. The Threxel has chosen him. We will follow. A sudden roar rose from the gathered warriors, a sound that shook the entire city to its foundations. Claws hammered against chests, tails lashed the air, voices melded into one unstoppable surge of primal devotion. Alex looked out over them, his expression a quiet, powerful calm that seemed to steady even the trembling stars above. The Threxel turned its massive head, eyes sweeping across the kneeling army with a cold, approving glare. A tremor ran through the ground, and for one charged moment, every creature present felt the pulse of something new, something larger than any council or tradition. A bond forged not by fear or domination but by recognition, predator to predator, soul to soul. Alex finally spoke, voice low but unmistakable over the rising chant. You judged too quickly. You saw weakness where there was patience, fragility where there was quiet resolve. But survival is not just a battle of tooth and claw. It is the willingness to listen, to adapt, to stand beside rather than always above. The chanting faded into an attentive hush. Even the air itself felt taut, every particle waiting. Alex raised his hand, resting it on the Threxel's massive skull. The beast bent lower, rumbling deep in its chest. I did not conquer this creature, Alex said, his fingers threading between jagged plates. I met it. I respected it. And in that space between fear and trust, we became more than enemies. We became a single will. The final words sank deep, like molten iron poured into ancient molds. Around him, warriors began rising, not in defiance but in new allegiance. Heads bowed. Chests expanded with pride instead of arrogance. Varesh turned, eyes bright with new fire. From this day forward, he declared, his voice slicing the silence, we will no longer measure strength by blood alone. We will learn. We will adapt. And we will stand with humanity as brothers. Alex nodded, the slightest movement, but it carried through the gathered throng like a seismic wave. At his side, the Threxel let out a final, low bellow, so deep it seemed to echo from the marrow of the earth itself. Birds scattered from the jungle canopy, distant predators fell silent, and the moonlight flickered across scales and mud and sweat like a living sigil. Alex took one last glance at the walls that had so recently dripped with scorn and laughter. Now they glowed with torches raised in tribute, claws clashed together in a new rhythm of respect, and countless alien eyes watched him not as prey, but as something beyond even the strongest hunter's dream. He turned then, stepping forward with the Threxel at his flank, leaving behind the mud and the bedding tokens and the old definitions of victory. Each step carried a thunderous promise, a quiet revolution that would ripple through stars and centuries alike. And as he disappeared beyond the city's inner gates, all knew one undeniable truth. The human had come not to conquer but to awaken. And in doing so, he had become the one thing no claw or fang could ever defeat. The spirit that listens, learns, and dares to stand unbroken before the wildest heart of the universe.